The ship came out of hyperspace with a loud crack. Inside, the lights flickered red and then turned white again. The battle was over. Another victory for the Galactic Coalition. Kang Junho sat alone in the corner of the transport ship. His armor was covered in dust and dried blood. Some of it was his. Most of it was not. He did not move. He did not speak. He just stared at the metal floor beneath his boots. Around him, alien medics rushed to help the wounded. They moved past the human soldiers like they were furniture. One Valorian medic stopped near Junho, looked at him, and then walked away without a word. Humans were strong. Humans could wait. Junho was 32 years old. He had been fighting for the Coalition since he was 19. 13 years of war. 13 years of blood and fire and death. He had killed so many enemies that he stopped counting long ago. The aliens called him the Silent Wall. They said wherever he stood, the enemy could not pass. They said he was the greatest human warrior in the galaxy. He did not feel great. He felt tired. The transport landed on the Coalition station with a heavy thud. The doors opened and bright light poured in. Junho stood slowly. His body ached in places he could not name. He walked down the ramp and into the busy station. Thousands of aliens moved through the halls. Valorians with their tall bodies and pale blue skin. Kethrani with 4 arms and eyes like black stones. Morvani who floated instead of walking. They all looked at Junho as he passed. Some nodded with respect. Others looked away quickly, afraid of the human who had become a legend. High Commander Velthus was waiting in the main hall. He was Valorian, tall and thin, with silver robes that touched the floor. His face showed no emotion. It never did. "Soldier Kang," Velthus said. His voice was cold and smooth like ice. "Another successful mission. The Drokari forces have been destroyed. The planet is ours." Junho stopped walking. He looked at the High Commander, but said nothing. "You have done well," Velthos continued. "The Coalition is grateful for your service. Your skills are remarkable." 47, Junho said. His voice was quiet and rough. He had not spoken in 3 days. Velthos tilted his head slightly. "I do not understand." 47 human soldiers died today, Junho said. Their names were Park Dongwoo, Lee Sujin, Kim Hansel, Choi. Yes, Velthus raised his hand to stop him. "Casualties are expected in war. The important thing is that we won. The Drokari have lost another stronghold. This is what matters." Junho stared at the alien for a long moment. Velthos did not blink. His pale eyes showed nothing. No sadness. No guilt. Nothing. "Get some rest, Soldier Kang," Velthos said. "There will be another mission soon. We need you ready." The High Commander turned and walked away. His silver robes made a soft sound as they dragged across the floor. Junho watched him go and felt something cold settle in his chest. It was not anger. It was something worse. It was understanding. He walked to the human barracks alone. The halls here were smaller and darker. The Coalition did not spend much money on human quarters. They did not need to. Humans were tough. Humans could survive anywhere. That was why the Coalition wanted them. Junho entered his small room and closed the door. The room had a bed, a small table, and nothing else. He sat on the bed and began to remove his armor. Each piece was heavy. Each piece had a story. A scratch from a Drokari blade on the shoulder plate. A burn mark from an explosion on the chest piece. Dents and holes that had been repaired so many times. He could not remember them all. He set the armor on the floor and reached under his pillow. There was a letter there. Paper was rare in space. Most people used screens. But Junho's sister still sent him real letters. She said it felt more human that way. He opened the letter carefully. The paper was soft and white. His sister's handwriting was neat and small. "Dear brother," the letter began. "Spring has come to our village. The cherry blossoms are beautiful this year. I wish you could see them. My students asked about you again today. They want to know when the hero will come home. I told them soon. I hope I am not lying." Junho read the letter 3 times. He could almost smell the cherry blossoms. He could almost hear his sister's voice. He could almost feel the warm sun of Earth on his face. But he was not on Earth. He was millions of light years away, sitting in a cold metal room, surrounded by aliens who saw him as nothing more than a weapon. He put the letter down and looked at his hands. They were rough and scarred. Hands that had killed thousands. Hands that had saved hundreds. Hands that had held dying friends as they took their last breath. He thought about the 47 soldiers who died today. They had families too. They had sisters and brothers and mothers and fathers. They had dreams of going home. Now they were just numbers in a report that Velthos would forget by tomorrow. Junao lay down on his bed and stared at the ceiling. Sleep would not come. It rarely did anymore. When he closed his eyes, he saw faces. Dead friends. Dead enemies. All of them asking the same question. Was it worth it? He did not have an answer. Outside his window, the stars burned cold and distant. The war continued somewhere out there in the darkness. And tomorrow, they would ask him to fight again. They always did. The silent wall would answer the call. He always did. But tonight, in the quiet of his small room, Kang Junho allowed himself to wonder how much longer he could keep standing. 2 years ago, Kang Junho had a best friend. His name was Tai Wu. They had grown up in the same village on Earth. They had played in the same fields as children. When the coalition came looking for human soldiers, they signed up together. They promised each other they would survive together. They would go home together. Tai Wu was different from Junho. He smiled a lot. He laughed easily. He made jokes even when things were bad. The other soldiers loved him because he could make them forget they were far from home. He could make them feel like everything would be okay. Junho was quiet. Tai Wu was loud. Together, they were perfect. The mission was supposed to be simple. A small Drokari base on a planet called Vero 7. The coalition said there were only a few hundred enemy soldiers there. Easy work for the human squad. But the coalition lied. When Junho and his team landed on Vero 7, they found not hundreds but thousands of Drokari soldiers waiting for them. It was a trap. The humans were bait. The Valorians knew the Drokari would send their main fleet to protect the base. That was what they wanted. While the humans died on the ground, the Valorian ships attacked the Drokari fleet from behind. It was a perfect strategy. Kill the humans to win the battle. Junho fought harder than he had ever fought before. He killed enemy after enemy until his arms burned and his vision blurred. But it was not enough. His squad of 50 soldiers fell one by one. The Drokari kept coming like an endless wave. Tai Wu was shot in the chest near the end. Junho found him lying in a canyon, his back against a rock, his hand pressed against the wound. Blood was everywhere. Too much blood. "Hey," Tai Wu said with a weak smile. "Looks like I messed up." Junho dropped to his knees beside his friend. "Do not talk. Save your strength. Help is coming." But they both knew help was not coming. The coalition had already won their battle in space. The humans on the ground were forgotten. Tai Wu coughed and blood came out of his mouth. His eyes looked up at the gray sky. "Junho," he whispered. "Did they know? What? Did they know we would die here? Did they send us here to die?" Junho could not answer. His throat was too tight. His eyes were burning. Tai Wu reached out and grabbed Junho's hand. His grip was weak now. Go home, brother. Go see the cherry blossoms. Tell my mother I was brave. You tell her yourself, Junho said. Stay awake. Stay with me. But Taiwu's eyes were already closing. His breathing slowed. His grip on Junho's hand became loose. It is so quiet, Taiwu whispered. I can almost hear the river back home. And then he was gone. Junho held his friend's body for a long time. He did not cry. He did not scream. He just sat there in the blood and dust, holding the only person who had ever understood him. When night came, he picked up Taiwu's body and walked. He walked for 3 days across that dead planet. He did not eat. He did not sleep. He just walked until he found a coalition pickup point. The Valorian officer who greeted him looked at Taiwu's body with no emotion. Another casualty, he said. Leave it here. We will process it. Process it. Junho's voice was barely human. Yes, the standard procedure for deceased personnel. Junho stepped closer to the officer. The alien was taller than him, but in that moment, the Valorian looked afraid. His name was Taiwu, Junho said slowly. He was my brother, and you will not touch him. The officer stepped back and said nothing more. Junho took Taiwu's body back to the station himself. He made sure it was sent home to Earth. He made sure Taiwu's mother received her son with honor. Then he went to find High Commander Velthos. The meeting was short. Junho asked one question. Did you know we would die on Barrow 7? Velthos looked at him with those cold, empty eyes. Human soldiers are remarkably resilient. We calculated that some would survive. You survived. That is what matters. 46 soldiers died. Good people. My friends. And their sacrifice won us a great victory, Velthos replied. The Drukhari fleet is destroyed. Hundreds of coalition ships are saved. Thousands of Valorian lives protected. This is the mathematics of war, Soldier Kang. Surely you understand. Junho stood there in silence. He wanted to kill the alien in front of him. He wanted to break something. He wanted to scream until his voice was gone. But he did none of those things. He simply turned and walked away. That was 2 years ago. Since then, Junho had fought in 30 more battles. He had become even more famous. The Silent Wall. The human who could not be stopped. The weapon that always won. But he never forgot Varro 7. He never forgot Taiwu's question. Did they know? Now, sitting in his quarters after another bloody victory, Junho heard a soft knock on his door. He opened it and found Minji standing there. She was a human medic, young and smart, with kind eyes that had seen too much death. I should not be here, she whispered. But you need to see this. She handed him a datapad. On it were classified orders for the next mission. 300 human soldiers. A Drukhari fortress. Minimal support. Junho read the mission details and felt his blood turn cold. It was Varro 7 all over again. The humans would be bait. The coalition expected most of them to die. It was acceptable to them. They are doing it again, Minji said. Her voice was shaking. They think we are just tools. Things to use and throw away. Junho looked at the datapad for a long time. He thought about Taiwu. He thought about the 47 soldiers who died today. He thought about the 300 young humans who would die tomorrow. And something inside him, something that had been cracking for years, finally began to break. Thank you, Minji, he said quietly. Oh, now, forget you gave me this. She nodded and disappeared into the dark hallway. Junho closed the door and sat down. He looked at his armor sitting in the corner. It had protected him through so many battles. It had made him a legend. But what good was a legend if it only served those who did not care if he lived or died? For the first time in 13 years, Kang Junho began to think about something other than the next battle. He began to think about the end. Junho did not sleep that night. He sat in his room and read the mission orders again and again. 300 human soldiers. A fortress full of enemies. Almost no support from the coalition fleet. The numbers were clear. Most of them would die. He thought about doing nothing. He thought about staying quiet, following orders, being the good soldier he had always been. That was the easy path. That was what they expected from him. But then he thought about Taiwu. He thought about his friend's last question. Did they know? Did they send us here to die? When morning came, Junho made a decision. He would speak. The Coalition Council met once a week in a great hall at the center of the station. Representatives from every species sat in a circle around a raised platform. Valorians, Kethrani, Morvani, and a dozen other races. They made decisions about the war. They decided who lived and who died. Humans were not allowed in these meetings. They were soldiers, not leaders. They followed orders. They did not make them. But Junho walked into the great hall anyway. The room fell silent when he entered. Alien eyes turned to look at the human in battered armor walking across the polished floor. Guards moved to stop him, but hesitated. Everyone knew who he was. Everyone knew what he could do. High Commander Velthos rose from his seat. Soldier Kang, this is a closed meeting. You are not permitted here. I need to speak, Junho said. His voice was calm but firm. It is about the next mission. Whispers spread through the room. The aliens looked at each other with confusion. A human asking to speak? This had never happened before. Ambassador Thyra, a Valorian female with softer eyes than most of her kind, raised her hand. Let him speak. The human has earned that much. Velthos frowned but nodded slowly. Very well. Make it quick. Junho walked to the center of the room and stood on the platform. He looked at the alien faces around him. Some showed curiosity. Some showed annoyance. None showed respect. The mission to the Drokari fortress, Junho began. You are sending 300 humans with minimal support. The fortress has 10,000 enemy soldiers inside. You know most of us will die. The mission is strategically important, Velthos interrupted. Your sacrifice will draw out enemy reinforcements and allow our fleet to strike their supply lines. It is necessary. Necessary for who? Junho asked. The Valorian ships will stay far from danger. Your soldiers will watch from space while humans die on the ground. This is not partnership. This is using us. The room became very quiet. No one had ever spoken to the council like this. Velthos's pale face showed a flash of anger before returning to its usual cold mask. You are a soldier, Velthos said slowly. Your job is to fight, not to question. I have fought for 13 years, Junho replied. I have killed more enemies than anyone in this coalition. I have watched friends die in my arms. I have given everything. And in return, you see us as tools. Weapons to be used and thrown away when broken. That is not true, Ambassador Thyra said gently. Humans are valued members of the coalition. Your bravery is respected by all. Respected? Junho turned to look at her. When was the last time a human sat in this council? When was the last time our leaders were asked before sending us to die? You call it respect, but I call it something else. I call it a convenient lie. The aliens shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some looked away. Others stared at Junho with cold eyes. What do you want, human? Velthos asked. His voice was sharp now. I want you to change the mission, Junho said. Send more ships. Give us real support. Or find another way to win that does not require human blood. Velthos laughed. It was a cold, empty sound. Change the mission? The plans are already made. The fleet is already moving. And besides, humans are uniquely suited for such tasks. You heal fast. You adapt quickly. You can survive what other species cannot. It is not cruelty. It is efficiency. Surely you understand. Junho looked at the High Commander for a long moment. He saw the truth in those pale eyes. The Coalition did not see humans as partners. They saw them as useful, expendable, replaceable. I understand, Junho said quietly. I understand perfectly. He turned and walked out of the great hall. Behind him, the council continued their meeting as if nothing had happened. The mission would go forward as planned. 300 humans would march into death tomorrow. Ambassador Thyra watched Junho leave. She saw something in his face that worried her. It was not anger or sadness. It was something worse. It was the look of a man who had finally stopped believing in lies. That evening, Junho walked through the station. Young human soldiers passed him in the hallways. They were preparing for tomorrow's mission. Checking weapons. Writing letters home. Some were barely 20 years old. They looked at Junho with hope in their eyes. To them, he was a hero. A legend. If the Silent Wall was going with them, they believed they would be okay. They believed he would lead them to victory. One young soldier stopped and saluted. Sir, it is an honor to serve with you tomorrow. My name is Sunho. I have heard all the stories about you. Junho looked at the boy. He had bright eyes and a nervous smile. He reminded Junho of Taiwu. How old are you? Junho asked. 21, sir. This is my first big mission. First and probably last, Junho thought. But he did not say it. Be brave tomorrow, Junho said instead. And stay close to your squad. I will, sir. Thank you, sir. The young soldier walked away with a smile. He had no idea what was waiting for him. Junho returned to his quarters and closed the door. He stood in front of his armor for a long time. It hung on a stand in the corner, polished and ready. 13 years of battles were written on its surface. 13 years of blood and victory and loss. He thought about Taiwu. He thought about the 47 soldiers who died yesterday. He thought about Sunho and the 300 others who would die tomorrow. And then he thought about his sister Yuna, waiting for him on Earth, hoping he would come home. He reached out and touched the cold metal of his armor. It had protected him for so long. It had made him famous. It had made him a weapon, but he was tired of being a weapon. He was tired of watching good people die for aliens who did not care. He was tired of standing. For the first time in his life, Junho began to think about what it would mean to stop. The morning came too quickly. The launch bay was filled with noise and movement. 300 human soldiers stood in neat rows, their armor shining under the bright lights. They checked their weapons one last time. They whispered prayers in languages from every corner of Earth. They prepared to die. Above them, on observation platforms, hundreds of aliens watched. Valorians in their silver robes. Kathrani with their forearms crossed. Morvani floating silently like ghosts. They had come to see the humans march off to war. It was entertainment to them. A show of the brave little species that fought so well. High Commander Velthos stood at the front of the platform. He held a speaking device that made his voice echo through the entire bay. Today is a great day for the Coalition, Velthos announced. Today, our brave human allies will strike at the heart of the Drakari Dominion. Their courage will pave the way for our final victory. History will remember this battle. History will remember their sacrifice. The human soldiers stood still and listened. Some believed the words. Some did not. But all of them followed orders. That was what humans did. You fight not just for the Coalition, Velthos continued. You fight for the future of the galaxy. For peace. For freedom. Your names will be honored forever. Empty words, Junho thought as he stood at the back of the hall. Words that cost nothing and meant nothing. The Valorians would not remember their names. They would not visit their graves. They would simply find more humans to replace them. Velthos finished his speech and smiled his cold smile. Now, let us welcome the hero who will lead you to glory. The warrior who has never known defeat. The Silent Wall himself. Kang Junho. The crowd parted. All eyes turned to the back of the hall. The human soldiers looked at their hero with hope and trust. The aliens looked at him with curiosity. Everyone waited. Junho began to walk forward. His boots echoed on the metal floor. Each step was slow and heavy. The hall fell completely silent. 300 soldiers held their breath. Junho walked past the rows of young humans. He saw their faces. So many of them were barely adults. They had left their families and their homes to fight a war that was not theirs. They had given everything because they believed in something greater than themselves. And tomorrow, most of them would be dead. He reached the center of the hall and stopped. He stood directly below the observation platform where Velthos and the other aliens watched. He could feel their eyes on him. They expected him to speak, to inspire, to be the weapon they had created. But Junho was done being a weapon. Without a word, he reached up and began to remove his armor. The hall gasped. Confused whispers spread through the crowd. What was he doing? Junho took off his gauntlets first. The metal pieces clanged against the floor like bells. Then his arm guards. Then his shoulder plates. Each piece fell with a heavy sound that echoed through the silent hall. Velthos leaned forward on the platform. Soldier Kang, what is the meaning of this? Junho did not answer. He did not even look up. He just kept removing his armor. The chest plate came off next. It was the heaviest piece, scarred from 100 battles. It hit the floor with a crash that made some soldiers jump. Then his leg guards. His boots. Piece by piece, the legend of the Silent Wall fell away. Finally, only the helmet remained. Junho held it in his hands and looked at it for a long moment. This helmet had protected him for 13 years. Inside it, he had become a myth, a ghost, a weapon that aliens feared and humans worshipped. He set the helmet gently on top of the pile of armor. Then he turned and began to walk toward the exit. Velthos stood up quickly. Soldier, stop. You cannot do this. The mission needs you. The coalition needs you. Junho kept walking. He did not look back. Guards! Velthos shouted. Stop him? 2 Kethrani guards moved to block the exit. Their 4 arms reached for their weapons. But before they could do anything, something unexpected happened. A young human soldier stepped in front of Junho. It was Sunho, the 21-year-old who had spoken to him yesterday. Sir, Sunho said quietly. His voice was shaking. What are you doing? Junho stopped and looked at the young man. For the first time in days, he spoke. Going home. Sunho stared at him. Behind them, 300 soldiers watched in complete silence. The aliens on the platforms watched too, frozen with confusion. But the mission, Sunho whispered. They said we could win. They said you would lead us. They lied, Junho said simply. They have always lied. We are not soldiers to them. We are meat. Bodies to throw at their enemies while they stay safe. Sunho's face went pale. He looked up at the Valorians watching from above. Then he looked back at Junho. But what about the war? What about protecting the galaxy? The galaxy has survived for millions of years before humans came, Junho said. It will survive without us dying for people who do not care if we live or die. He started walking again. Sunho did not move to stop him. Instead, The young soldiers stepped aside and watched Junho pass. Then something strange happened. Sunho reached up and began to remove his own helmet. Another soldier saw this and did the same. Then another. Then another. The sound of armor hitting the floor spread through the hall like a wave. 10 soldiers. 20. 50. 100. The clatter became a roar as more and more humans dropped their weapons and armor. Velthos watched in horror. "What are you doing? Stop. This is mutiny. This is treason." No one listened. The humans were done listening. Junho reached the exit and paused. He turned around one last time and looked at the hall behind him. Where 300 armed soldiers had stood, now 300 free humans stood in their simple clothes. Their armor lay in piles at their feet like broken chains. They looked at Junho with something new in their eyes. Not hope for victory. Not fear of death. Something else. Freedom. Junho nodded once. Then he turned and walked out of the launch bay. Behind him, 300 humans followed. Above them, the aliens could only watch in silence as their weapons walked away. The station fell into chaos. Alarms rang through every corridor. Valorian officers shouted orders that no one followed. Kathrani guards ran back and forth, unsure of what to do. No one had ever prepared for this. No one had ever imagined that humans would simply refuse to fight. Junho walked calmly through the madness. Behind him, the 300 soldiers followed in silence. They did not run. They did not hide. They just walked, step by step, toward the shuttle docks. More humans joined them along the way. Engineers who fixed alien ships. Medics who healed alien wounds. Workers who cleaned alien floors. Word spread quickly through the station. The silent wall had walked away. And he was not alone. By the time Junho reached the shuttle docks, nearly 1,000 humans walked behind him. Minji was waiting there with a transport ship ready. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were determined. "I did not think you would actually do it," she said. "Neither did I," Junho admitted. She handed him a flight key. "This ship can reach Earth in 4 days. I loaded enough supplies for everyone." Junho looked at the key in his hand. Such a small thing. Such a simple object. But it meant everything. "What about you?" he asked. "I am staying," Minji said. "Someone has to help the humans who cannot leave yet. Someone has to keep the door open." Junho nodded. "You are braver than me." She smiled sadly. "No, you are the bravest person I have ever known. You showed us that we have a choice. That is something no one else ever did." Quick footsteps echoed behind them. Junho turned and saw Ambassador Thyra running toward them. She was alone, without guards. "Wait," she called out. "Please wait." Junho held up his hand to stop the soldiers behind him. They tensed but obeyed. Thyra stopped a few meters away, breathing hard. "You cannot do this," she said. "Do you understand what will happen? Without human soldiers, the war effort will collapse. The Drokari will advance. Worlds will fall. Millions will die. Then learn to fight your own wars," Junho said quietly. Thyra's face showed pain. Real pain. She was different from Velthos. She had always been kinder to humans. But kindness was not enough. "We need you," she pleaded. "The coalition needs humanity." Junho stepped closer to her. He did not raise his voice. He did not show anger. He simply spoke the truth. "You never needed us. You used us. You found a species that could bleed and heal and fight and die, and you thought you had found the perfect weapon. But we are not weapons. We are not tools. We are human beings." Thyra had no answer. Her silver eyes filled with something that might have been shame. "The Drokari are not our enemies," Junho continued. "We have no quarrel with them. We have no reason to die for people who think our lives are worth less than their own. If you want peace, find it without our blood." He turned away from her and walked toward the ship. The 1,000 humans behind him followed. Thera did not try to stop them. She just stood there and watched as the people her kind had used for generations finally chose themselves. The transport ship was crowded but quiet. Humans filled every seat and every corner. Young soldiers sat next to old engineers. Medics shared space with workers. They were strangers from different parts of the galaxy, but they were connected by something deeper now. They were free. Junho sat near the front of the ship and watched through the window as the station grew smaller and smaller. He thought about everything he was leaving behind. His reputation, his legend, the life he had known for 13 years. He did not miss any of it. Sunho came and sat next to him. The young soldier still looked nervous, but there was something different in his eyes now. Something stronger. "Sir," he said quietly, "what happens now?" "Now we go home," Junho replied. "And then?" Junho thought about his sister Yuna. He thought about cherry blossoms and quiet rivers and the feeling of sun on his face. He thought about a life without war. "Then we live," he said. "Just live." The ship entered hyperspace with a flash of light. Earth was 4 days away. Months passed. The Coalition tried to continue the war without human soldiers, but it was not the same. The Drukhari pushed back harder than ever. Worlds that humans had protected began to fall. The other species of the Coalition finally understood what they had lost. They sent ambassadors to Earth. They came with apologies and promises. They offered partnership instead of servitude. Equal seats at the council. Equal say in decisions. Equal respect for human lives. Junho was asked to return. He refused, but others accepted. A new generation of human soldiers joined the Coalition, this time as true allies. They fought when they chose to fight. They refused when they chose to refuse. And the aliens learned to value them not as weapons, but as partners. On Earth, Junho lived a quiet life. He moved back to his village and helped his sister Yuna with her school. The children there did not know about the battles he had fought or the enemies he had killed. To them, he was just a kind man who helped their teacher and told them stories. One day, a student asked him if he was a hero. Junho knelt down and looked at the child with gentle eyes. "A hero is not someone who wins every fight," he said. "A hero is someone who knows when to stop fighting." The child did not fully understand, but she smiled anyway. Yuna watched from across the room. Her brother looked different now. The weight that had pressed down on him for so many years was gone. He laughed more easily. He slept more peacefully. He was finally home. That evening, brother and sister sat together and watched the sunset. The sky turned orange and pink and gold. "Do you ever miss it?" Yuna asked. "The war? The battles?" Junho thought about the question for a long time. "No," he finally said. "I miss the friends I lost. I miss the good people who never came home. But the fighting? No, I do not miss that at all." Yuna nodded and leaned against his shoulder. Across the galaxy, the legend of Kang Junho changed. Aliens no longer called him the Silent Wall. They called him something else now, the one who walked away, and in time. They understood that walking away had been his greatest act of strength. Not the battles he won, not the enemies he killed, but the moment he set down his armor, said nothing, and chose peace. That was the story that would last forever.